my beautiful friends. I'm your host, Leah Rowling.
And I'm Carrie Kenzie. Welcome to Shift Happens. Discover the leader within. This podcast is designed to disrupt the way you live, lead, and love. At Shift, we challenge traditional narratives and believe that inner wisdom is the key to every decision.
Are you ready to explore a new paradigm of both living and leading? We'll dive deep into our innate strengths as women: compassion, curiosity, intuition, grace, vulnerability, and love. The shift, it's about to get real. Rediscover the power within and transform your life. Stay tuned. It all starts now. Hello, beautiful friends. Oh my gosh, we had just a ball just now, so I'm just trying to regain my composure, but welcome to the show. So you may or not know this, but as the show gets started, our music plays. And so Carrie and I are trying very hard not to talk, not to interrupt the music. And we're over here dancing. And then all of a sudden now we're at showtime. So it's showtime. So welcome back to the show. Shift Happens. We are your host, Carrie Kenzie and Leah Rowling. And we are just so super grateful to have you here. Today, we are diving into one of the most important and yet overlooked conversations. And that is around building a legacy of leadership. Not just in the workforce, but truly how we are bringing legacy and leading into our lives, into our homes, and into everything. And it truly matters. Legacy is so much more than what you do. It's about who you are, right? And how you live and the impact you leave on those around you. And really, it's made up of the choices that you make or don't make every single day. So today we are going to explore how we can build a legacy in our careers, how we can build a legacy in our families, how we can build a legacy living in the moment, while leaving something really meaningful and beautiful behind. We're going to talk about some of the negotiations that we have with ourselves, whether it be our health or our relationships or our interests, and why fulfillment is actually a conversation that's part of this. And that is how maybe, perhaps, the real measure of lasting legacy is around. So it's a big topic. It's a big task. And it's a conversation that's about to happen right now. So let's get into it, Miss Carrie. Legacy. Define it for us, beautiful soul.
Oh my gosh. It's so, well, first of all, I go back to just the gratitude, right? Just gratitude. And I think we just have to take a moment to pause in gratitude for how amazing it is that we get to have this conversation, and for just the beauty and the trust that's been placed within us to bring this forward. Mm-hmm. So it's so good. It's so good. And in that, I would say, even for each individual, the incredible gratitude for the legacy that's been placed in you, and for the trust that the universe has for you to be and to live that legacy. I think that too often we look at legacy as something of the past. We look at legacy as something we're going to leave behind, as opposed to the way that we live. And what people have the opportunity, are graced with the opportunity to be able to experience from us in our legacy. Because whether you choose it or not, you're already living it. It's just whether or not you're bringing it forward with intentionality, in beauty, and the way that you truly desire to be experienced in this moment. Because the way that you choose to be experienced in this moment is the way that you choose to experience it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this conversation is so important, why it's so profound, and why I think it's such a big task that people want to avoid it, if that makes sense. I think it's such a big, it can be somewhat overwhelming to truly think about legacy, and perhaps that's why we put it off to the end.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 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 It's very similar to, in the way that you defined it, it's kind of similar to purpose in the way that we define it, right? Like the purpose of our life is to exist, period. And without proof, without, right?
Yeah,
Without a
right.
qualifier.
Right.
And our legacy is really no different. Like
It's the same thing, right? It's the purpose is the experience that we are. The purpose is the experience of us. It is simply to exist. It is to exist, and it is to exist, like you say, without that proof. Because we don't, I mean, that was so clear to us last
Yes.
month in the way that it showed up,
Oh
right?
gosh,
Like
yes.
we get to exist without proof. And that's purpose.
Mhm.
Legacy then becomes how others experience that purpose of us, how others experience our existence. But we get to choose that existence. We get to choose the energy that we bring into this world. We get to choose the way that we lead. We get to choose the way that we show up.
Mhm.
And it for no other reason than how I want to experience this existence. Period. End of
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
So they're so intricately intertwined.
Mm.
And then that legacy is not just the living, but it is the thing that is left.
Yeah.
It gets to be twofold, which
Yeah.
is incredible. But here's the thing, and this just popped in, and it was like, oh, please make this very, very clear. The legacy is the experience of you and how others experience you. Legacy is not how others interpret that experience of you. Do you
Mm.
see what I'm saying? Because if legacy is in the interpretation, then it becomes a purpose of existing with proof.
Yes.
You
And yeah, I do see
Yeah.
that. And it becomes part of the interpreter's legacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So it truly is living legacy is the experience that other people have of you, but it is not the interpretation, the meaning that they place on it for themselves.
Yes.
Okay? Because I can experience you and you could be bringing forward beauty. You could be bringing forward love, but my experience of you based on my interpretation could be something completely different because I'm sitting in a space of needing validation. I'm sitting in a space of insecurity. Therefore, I place a different meaning on it. Okay? That meaning then becomes my experience that I get to navigate through, right? So your legacy is so multifaceted that you have actually you will never comprehend the fullness of it
Mhm.
because it is everybody is consistently learning. Everybody's consistently learning, but that's where you draw it has nothing to do with you. Okay, that was a lot. It
Yeah.
just felt like it.
No,
It's big.
it's so good. It's so big. We preface that. This is a conversation, and so welcome.
Yes, yes.
Welcome to the show. And it really is then a reminder always to be conscious, to be intentional, to be very, very mindful of how you show up and the energy in which you show
Yeah.
up. Because everyone, being the energy around, is watching. Everyone witnesses. And most importantly, you are the witness of it.
Yeah.
You are the witness of it. And even though maybe some negative energy is justified, because we could all justify our negative energy, right?
Yes.
In our judgment of how things should be and how other people should be, right? You feel that energy. You feel you feel that vibration. No amount of judgment that you place on anyone else is going to be felt by them. Only you. And I bring that forward only because if your legacy, right, the thing that other people get to experience of you, if that matters to you at all, then that has to be one of the first things that you wake up with every day, is just a dedication, a consistent commitment to your character and how you want to vibrate in this world.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, just to simplify, if we can, to simplify kind of what we unpacked there in the beginning, it's really this. It really is in being intentional in how you show up and being intentional in what you take on. Right. Like you get to show up. And I love how you said we show up and then we have these expectations of how other people should experience us. And when somebody doesn't experience us in that way, then we will take that and we will flip it back on ourselves. Right. And then we will create judgment, not just outside, but kind of here. And so it's not just creating the intentionality of how we want to show up, but it's holding to that truth of how we're showing up and allowing other people to have whatever experience they want of your truth. You know, I've been interviewing a lot of leaders recently. And one in particular, here's what I notice of incredible leaders who are able to just hold themselves in consistency throughout, who show up as mentors, who show up with compassion, who show up as incredible leaders. It's that somewhere along the way, they understood and discovered their truth, meaning they understood the authenticity of who they were. And they held to that. And it's not to say that they didn't get swayed. It's not to say that they didn't falter, because they did.
Yeah.
But they were always able to come back to that consistency of their experience, of who they are. And when you can consistently come back to that experience, right, that purpose, then when you do get caught a little off guard because somebody experiences you in a way that, or judges you, or, you know, in a way that you don't like or care for, if you come back to that always and consistently, that's what creates an amazing leader. But it's holding to that truth.
Yeah. And it's really challenging to not want to lead how people want you to lead, right? To try to please, to try to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
And so therefore not leading as authentically as you can. And I think in a world where we have so many things to consume, it's no wonder why we lack authenticity. Just ask them how you should lead. They'll tell you.
Yes.
Read a book, listen to a podcast on how to lead. Like, they'll tell you, these are the things you need to do. This is how you need to communicate. You know, you need to be more bold. You need to be more assertive. You need to hold people more. Like, they'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And it doesn't ever feel authentic because we don't take the time to really invite this question in, which is, how is this authentic to me?
Yes.
Like, I'm all about consuming different, like, reading and researching and trying to figure out, like, what are the best practices to lead consciously.
Yes.
But then we have to run them through our own interpretation filter as to how can I show up authentically in this, as opposed to I'm going to take this and I'm going to try this, and it doesn't work. So we think that it's either that book or that podcast or this that isn't working, or then quickly then we're like, well, we're just not fit to lead. But it's either them or it's me, right?
But that's where you come back to. If you can hold consistent and true to who you are, if you can hold consistent and true to that authentic aspect of you, to that truth of you, which is really just that authenticity, right? Then yes, we're going to falter, and yes, we're going to slip, and yes, we're going to, you know, try a new pair of jeans, even though you know the ones that you've been wearing for 10 years freaking fit like a glove, and you know that that's the brand and like the size and all the things, right? We're going to
Yeah.
go try something else and it's not going to fit quite right. As long as you consistently come back to that authenticity,
Mhm.
as long as you consistently come back to and hold true to that existence, right? Because that
Yeah.
existent doesn't need proof. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to try on new things all the time because it just feels so confident.
Yeah. Yeah. So how would you invite our leaders, we like to call them legacy leaders, right?
Yes.
How would you invite leaders um, as they navigate situations, circumstances with their teams? How
Hmm.
would you invite that legacy piece as they navigate these struggles, challenges, conversations with their teams?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I think it always is going to, it always is going to come back to an understanding of self.
Mhm.
It always is going to come back to um, every experience that you have externally has to come back to the self internally. Like, which is really interesting to say. And I know I feel like we repeat this, but it holds true. If 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 you are wanting to navigate in this legacy and you are wanting to be that living legacy within your organization and you're wanting the team to come alongside in legacy, and I'm not just saying just in your legacy but in the legacy of the organization, because there it is multifaceted, right? Your legacy is going to be extended out into the organization because it was created by, it's run by, it's facilitated by you, right? So they're going to go hand in hand. So you have to be very consistent in your experience, very consistent in understanding that core purpose, in understanding why it is that you stepped in, what it is that you are consistently doing. And sometimes we got to go back and maybe look at that a little bit differently. Did I renegotiate myself in any way, shape, or form based on what it is that we've been going through
Mhm.
as an organization, what we've been going through as a family, what I felt like I needed to do or shift in order to, navigate this a little bit differently? Did I
Yeah.
renegotiate something for myself? That's the first question,
Yeah.
don't you think?
Mhm. Yeah.
And if I did renegotiate something, what is it I renegotiated?
Yeah.
What did I set aside? What did I set down? How
Mhm.
do I pull that back so that I can come back to that truth of who I am? Because
Yeah.
you don't renegotiate in a legacy.
No.
You never renegotiate.
No.
So that would kind of be that first thing to look at. And then when you can pull back to and come back home to that purpose and come back home to, this is what we were meant to do. This is the mission. This is why. Then we get to, because we embody that, we get to experience and express that in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Leah?
No, I mean, I love it so much because we always are talking about coming back home to self.
Yeah.
And then I think once you do that, right,
Hmm.
you you role model, you role
Yeah.
the way, which is one of the key components of influence, right? It's one of the key components of really effective leadership by way of influence,
Hmm.
right? So then the secondary question, other than what am I negotiating here?
Hmm.
What areas of my life am I negotiating?
Yes.
In my full self here is, are you building, are you inspiring, are you influencing leaders or followers? Right?
Mm.
Because I think the legacy in leadership really is defined by leaders that you develop, not just the goals that you achieve and the tasks that you check mark.
Yes.
Are you empowering the people that work with you for the mission?
Yes.
Are you empowering them to lead themselves?
Yes.
They have role modeling, right? Or are you just tasking them to follow?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that would be the other thing I would say as it relates to, I mean, legacy in leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that it's because it is so true that tasking does create the following.
Yeah.
When you come back home to that understanding of legacy, it is not something that you do and you push out.
Yeah.
It's something that you do that other people just get to experience.
Yeah.
And so it does become a modeling.
Yeah.
It is done with intention,
Mhm.
but it's not done in desperation. There's a
Yeah.
difference between the two.
Yes. And the difference is whether or not it's in inspiration or in manipulation,
Yes.
right? Whether it's to inspire or to control.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always, you can always tell the difference,
Yeah.
by the way, based on the thoughts you're having just prior to stepping forward in it.
Yes.
I want them to see this. I want them to understand this. I need to show them this because of XYD. Anytime you do that, there's a place of manipulation there, and it's manipulation because it's not trusting that they understand and know it on their own.
Yeah.
And it's feeling like, right? And then what do you do every time you do that? You renegotiate yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 Because the highest version of you, to just wrap that up with a bow, right?
Yes.
What Carrie means by negotiating of self is the very highest version of you doesn't need to manipulate anything.
Just needs to show up.
It just needs to show up, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
from that higher, most loving, most charismatic, most empowered self, you become the inspiration.
Well, that's just it. And that's, I mean, when you go back to, I mean, you cannot empower somebody else unless you're empowered within yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the only way that you're empowered within yourself is when you truly trust and understand and know. And when you come back to that, just that experience, just knowing my purpose is the experience that I get to have in the now and
Yeah.
how I'm showing up in the now.
Yeah.
And that experience doesn't worry about what other people think. That experience doesn't worry about how other people show up.
Yeah.
It simply is there to exist for its own experience. Period.
Period. Period. So so that's teams. That's legacy and leadership.
Yeah.
And as it relates to the workforce, as it relates to teams, how do we bring this into our homes? How do we
It's the
bring
same way, right? It's the same thing. It's awful, but gosh, I mean, I looked at business ownership and family as really just kind of like a mere reflection of themselves. It just is. And I'm telling you, as a leader in an organization, at some point you have probably referred to it just being like a family, right? It's just like having kids. It's just like, it's the same thing.
Mhm.
It's the same thing. If you show up empowered at home, if you show up just truly not negotiating yourself, but loving yourself and knowing that you can do anything that you need to do, that you've got your back and you're confident in everything that you do, your kids see that, your family sees that, and they want that for themselves. And that's how they show up, because you no longer have to manipulate, you no longer have to get them to do the thing you need them to do. They just do it.
Yeah. So we've weaved in like a through line of coming back home to self, right? That self-empowerment.
Mhm.
What do you think, or what would you say is the number one, maybe you call it a tool, a strategy, a a thought, a discovery question? What's one or two things that tangible that we can give the audience today to really work, skill up, and develop around this coming back home to self?
Well, I think the first thing that we would challenge people to do is just to look at where they're renegotiating.
Mhm.
That's the first thing I would say, right?
Yeah.
Look at where you're renegotiating. And in that renegotiating, what we mean by that is where do you feel like you have to set part of yourself aside in
Mhm.
order to be the leader? Where do you feel like you have to set part of yourself aside in order to be the inspiration, in order to show up the way that you want to show up, or in order for other people to see you the way that you want to be seen,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that would be the first thing, is like, what are you renegotiating for yourself?
Mhm.
Why are you renegotiating that?
Uh-huh.
Right. And then I guess to kind of pull that around would be, what could you do to not have to do that anymore? What
Yeah.
do you need to understand, believe, or know? Or what do you have to release that somebody else believed for you? to come back to a place where you no longer have to renegotiate.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause there are sacrifices that we make, and
Yes.
a lot of times unconsciously.
Yeah.
But if you don't have where I would look in addition to that, if you're struggling to figure out where you're negotiating with yourself,
Mhm.
your brain isn't going to give that up freely,
No.
right? It's not going to be like, oh, by the way, these are the things, these are the area, right? Is I would just look where you're not honoring your word,
Yep.
right? Where you said you were going to be committed, but you're not,
Mhm.
because you're sacrificing the commitment, that honoring of self,
Yeah.
most likely to honor the people that you lead.
Yeah.
That is not required. So where are you not honoring your word? Maybe it's your word to get healthy. Maybe it's your word to be to yell less at your children. Maybe it's your word to have more quality time with your spouse. Maybe whatever your word is, wherever you're
Mhm.
not honoring that, that is a natural negotiation that you have made against your will.
Yeah.
Against your will. That's where you look to find how you can truly tap into being that leader
Mhm.
that truly leaves a legacy for generations to come.
Absolutely.
Okay, my friends.
Absolutely.
Any final words, Miss Carrie?
Oh my gosh. No, I feel like, boy, we just unpacked a lot today. I think it's incredible. And I think just going back to that understanding and coming back to that trueness of who you are. So, no, that's all I have.
Yeah, yeah. And know that the trueness of who you are is enough. It will always be enough.
Yeah.
And that is the work that we get to do. So if you are struggling, and if you find yourself sacrificing, if you find yourself negotiating, if you find yourself continually honoring what everybody else wants of you, and then too exhausted to honor what you want of you, we would invite you to a
Hmm.
strategy call. We would invite you to join us in our 8-week coming up in October, on October 28th. We're
Hmm.
going to do a deep dive 8-week into exploring all things leadership, but not because of what Carrie and I think about it,
No.
what you say and think about it. Think about this as creating your own authentic leadership blueprint with just some guides, because we couldn't possibly tell you how you need to lead, but you know. And it's our work and our mission to invite the very best of you out so that you can lead as authentically as you possibly can. Because we don't need leaders leading like everybody else. We need
No.
leaders leading like you. Okay, beautifuls.
Awesome.
Have a
Have
great,
a
great
good
day.
one.
Talk soon.
Bye.
You have been listening to Shift Happens. Discover the leader within with Leah Rowling and Carrie Kenzie, where we help you reconnect with your inner leader. Learn to trust your instincts and live with authenticity and confidence.
Tune in every Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time to Shift Happens on Transformation Talk Radio for more insights, inspiration, and actionable strategies to live and lead, not only in purpose, but on purpose. It is time to embrace a life and leadership style that is true to you. For more information, visit shift.life.